Good afternoon again to everyone. Thanks for joining today's session. I am Michaela Peck from the Office of Distance Learning, and in today's session, we'll be looking at quiz creation in UTech Online, which is our learning management system Moodle. Before we begin, can I have a show of, well, not hands, just in the chat, type yes or no if you have independently created a quiz before in your Moodle course. All right, so in the chat, just type a yes or a no, just to let me know. All right. All right, so I'm seeing more yeses than nos. I'm seeing a partially. All right. Okay, so I think we have more yeses than nos, even though all persons have not indicated. Still a challenge. Okay. Thanks for that comment, Mrs. Sawyer. Because it's a process for quiz creation, so I understand that it can be a challenge, especially if it's something that is not being done regularly. All right, so thanks for indicating your feedback as it relates to that. So as a lecturer, you can use quizzes in Moodle to evaluate your students' understanding of content that you're giving to them in class, right? The Moodle quizzes consist of a wide variety of question types. So you have multiple choice, true or false, short answers, essay type, you have drag and drop, and quite a number of other options, numerical types, matching, and more. I think Moodle actually allows for about 15 different question types, right? So it's an extensive list of question types. And the beauty about the quiz activity is that it allows you to administer a wide range of questions using a specific layout and order. And it also allows you to provide different kinds of feedback based on how a student performs on the quiz. And of course, you as the lecturer, you can control the ways that students can access the quiz. Now, does anybody know about the question bank? Can anybody take the mic and tell me anything at all about the question bank? Anybody knows what the question bank is and what is its relevance in quiz creation? Anybody at all?
I'm going to try.
All right, I like that. Dr. Williams, go ahead.
The question bank, to me, is have a list of questions. What I do with my question bank is to put them in categories,
Mm-hmm.
like the different subject matter, so that I can use questions from it. I can choose questions from it for a test or so. Don't know if that
Okay.
answers the question.
Okay. And when you put your questions in the question bank, it's easy for you to find them, right? Based on the quiz that you want, based on the questions you want to give to the students. It's easier for you to find the different questions, right?
Yeah, because I give it a heading, like
Right.
what area I'm questioning, and then I have several questions pertaining to a particular subject. Sometimes I have a question which I divide up, like a few questions that is relating to that very one, not in a topic, but that one question. I put variations of that questions as well.
Okay, very good. All right, thanks for that, Dr. Williams. So you're spot on with your idea and description of what the question bank is. So the question bank is really an organized repository for all the questions in your course, so separate from any quiz activities that might use them. So should you use a question bank? Yes. And why? And I advise this for any, even if it is a quiz with just 5 questions, I advise use of the question bank because it really provides a central, organized, and just an easy to find space for all of your questions. So if you have, let's say, 5 different quizzes that you want to set up in your course, and it might not be for the same day or the same week, it might be might be a setup in advance. All right, what the question bank allows you to do is to create a category for each quiz, and then you can upload the quiz questions in each category. So at any point in time you want to issue questions from that question bank, you'll be able to find it easily because you know the name you have given that particular question bank. All right. And it's also important to know that a quiz activity can be configured in a variety of ways. And of course, this is dependent on your pedagogical goals. So for example, you can configure a quiz to have no time limit, or the quiz can be timed so that students can have a set number of minutes or hours within which to complete the quiz. And of course, these settings control a quiz activity separately from the actual content of the quiz. So that means that configuring a quiz and adding questions to a quiz are two separate tasks, two separate things, right? Which I'll be demonstrating shortly. So the order goes like this. Once you have the questions in your question bank and you have a configured quiz activity, you can edit the quiz activity to select questions from your question bank and arrange them in your quiz according to how you want them to appear for your students. I'll be demonstrating everything. All right. And the last step as it relates to the quiz creation process is to configure how you would want Moodle to administer the quiz to the students and how you'd want Moodle to score the quiz. So once you configure the scoring, you can release a quiz by making it available. So this means that you can set it up for a certain date, or if you have it with the date but it is invisible, you can unhide it so that your students can gain access. And you can control access to your quiz as well using different methods, such as restricting the quiz to a particular group, right? You can also assign a password to the quiz if you only want a certain number of students to access the quiz. Good. You can also configure the quiz settings to give certain students extended time, or you can reopen a closed quiz to allow particular students to retake it. So once students make attempts on the quiz, you can review their attempts and you can monitor their progress. Moodle will automatically score the majority of the quiz question types in the quiz activity, but you can always go in and manually override a grade, or you can modify the grade book to reflect a new grade if you want. And also bear in mind that Moodle cannot mark essay type questions, right? So these are questions you'd have to go in and manually mark. All right, so we have a question. Can you use the password for students given accommodation as well?
Is that a question?
Oh, it's a comment. Can you use a password for students? I don't understand that comment. Could you clarify it?
No, you are talking about how you can use the restricted access
Password.
for different students. So when you have students for accommodation, like they have extra time for quizzes, what I do, I just duplicate the quiz, we put the extra time for the students and give them a different password.
Got it. Yes. Yes, that's true. All right, so I'm going to begin the demonstration. Of course, I'm going to start off by sharing my screen. Throughout the session, if you have any questions, please raise your hand, and then I will call on you and you can unmute and take the mic, or if it is that you're more comfortable using the chat session, you can type your question or comment in the chat. Today's session, like every other, is being recorded, and if you wish to have a recording of the session, you can always shoot me an email, or you can leave your email address in the chat session or chat section of today's session, and the recording will be sent to you. Okay, so as per usual, we use the Moodle demonstration course for all of our Moodle training sessions. So this is what I'm in now. Okay, and the first thing I want to do is to configure a quiz shell for the creation of my activity, my quiz activity. Okay, now we have to turn editing on. That's the first thing we have to do when we're creating any activity or any resource within UTech Online. we turn it in on, and then we scroll to that section in the course that we want to create the quiz in. And I don't remember if I had mentioned earlier, when you are actually doing quiz creation, you have several options for adding the quizzes. You have the bulk upload, which features you using a particular format like the gift format or the Aiken or the exam format. There are about 7 different formats that you can use for bulk uploads. And we'll be looking today at 2 of the formats I find to be easier than the others. And you also have the option of adding the questions individually. We'll be looking at that as well. Okay, so we're going to click the add an activity or resource link, and we are looking for the quiz activities right here because I starred it. Okay, so you can star activities or resources that you use regularly so as to prevent yourself from having to search for it each time. To star an activity or resource, you simply click on the star icon below that activity or resource. So if I click to start the forum, it will now appear as part of my starred activities. Okay, so I'm going to click on the quiz, and we're going to give this quiz a name. Let us call this Moodle demonstration quiz. And in the description box, this is where you give instructions to your students. Okay, so typically we can say something like answer all questions. Okay, and remember, the instructions do not have to be dull and boring text. Instructions could be a voice recording or any other media type that you'd want to integrate. A picture could be a part of the instructions, or it could be a video. All right, but you have several options for giving instructions to your students. Once we scroll down, we come upon the timing option, which basically allows you to set a date and time for opening the quiz. All right, so if you realize it is currently disabled, if I tick the enable option, it allows me to enter. So let's say I want the quiz for today at, let's say it is for 11 a.m. Let's set it for 11 a.m. All right, and if I want the quiz to close on a particular date and time, I can do so as well. So let's say I want it to close tomorrow. So remember, we have to enable these options to use them. Let's put the 10th, 11 a.m. Okay. All right. So this basically means that the quiz will open today at 11, but will close tomorrow at 11. So students have within this particular duration, or within this period rather, to complete the quiz. Now the time limit. If I set the time limit for 60 minutes, which is 1 hour, it means at any time the student goes on between March 9, 11 a.m. to March 10, 11 a.m., they have only 60 minutes to complete. All right, they only have 1 hour regardless. Once they enter between the 9th of March, 11 a.m. to the 10th of March, 11 a.m., they have 60 minutes to complete. Okay, let me just check to see if we have any questions. Just persons leaving their email addresses. Okay. All right. Now we have an option here which asks, when time expires, what do you want to do? There are three selections here. Open attempts can be submitted automatically when time expires, or there can be a grace period when open attempts can be submitted but no more questions answered. All right, so with the first option, where we have open attempts, sorry, I submitted automatically, it basically means that, let's say the student has their electricity terminated, or for some reason they were taken out of the quiz and the time is up. What do you want to happen? Do you want their attempts to be a waste, or do you want the system to automatically submit? That is what that option is for. Now with the second option, If an attempt is overdue, right, then the student can no longer answer any more questions. But during the submission grace period, they may still go to the summary page of the quiz and click the submit button. If they submit in that time, that's a grace period time, then their submission, or their attempt rather, is counted. If the students do not submit before the end of the grace period, then their attempt status will be recorded as never submitted. All right, and then we have the third option. Attempts must be submitted before the time expires, or they are not counted. The safest option, and the one that is most advantageous to your students, is open attempts are submitted automatically. Okay, and if it is that you forget anything that I'm saying while I'm going through, or even your own spare time, if you forget something, you can always click on the little question mark here. So these are little icons for help. If you forget what anything represents, you can always click on it and you will get help. All right, so Mrs. Ware, can you go ahead, please?
Yeah, you made reference to a grace period. When is, where, and when is that established? Or is there an automatic grace period?
No, so you get to enter that. So let me just click on it and show you. If I click on it, you can enter what the grace submission
Oh,
period
it's
is.
low. Once you click on that, okay.
Right.
Okay. Oh, once you click on that second option, then another box opens with that grace period. Okay.
Right, that you can manually enter.
Okay.
All right. So we're going to move down now to grade. Okay. So this section allows you to enter a grade category. So if it is that you have established a grade category in your grade book, and kindly note, this is not the same thing as the quiz category or the question bank. This has to do with creating folders for grade items in your grade book that just ensures neatness. So for example, if I have a course with quizzes, assignments, forums, and chats, I can create folders for these in my gradebook. So for example, for my quizzes, I'd create a folder called quizzes. For my assignments, I'd create a folder called assignments. So this establishes, as I said before, a semblance of neatness. So when the students go to the gradebook, they can see all of their activities categorized in their individual folders, and it's easier for them to see these activities because they are placed in one or housed together in their respective categories. So if it is that you have a grade category created in your gradebook for the quiz, you would have seen a drop down here and you would have been able to select that grade category. Now, grade to pass, you can enter grade to pass out of 10 here. So if I enter 6, this means that if the student receives a grade of less than 60%, the system would return to them a message that they have failed the quiz. All right. Next, we have attempts. How many attempts are you allowing? Attempts can be unlimited, which means that there are no restrictions on attempts, or they can have 1 to 10 attempts. All right, and of course, the attempts that you're giving them is highly dependent on the type of quiz. If it is a practice quiz, more than likely you'd want to give them unlimited or multiple attempts. If this is a quiz that is, you know, more geared toward assessing them, probably you'd want to just give them 1 attempt. Okay. Now, if I select unlimited, or if I select more than 1 attempts, it is going to now give me the option for grading method. Right? So how do I want to grade? Do I want the system to record their highest grade, their average grade, which is a mean of all the grades, their first attempt, or their last attempt? Okay, so these are options that the system allows for. All right. Let's move down to layout. How do you want the questions to appear on the page? Do you want all questions on one page, or do you want every question to have its own page, or do you want every 2 to every 50 questions on their own page? You get to decide. What we do recommend at the ODL is that you put each question, or every question rather, on their own page, simply because it reduces, not eliminate, because they can't really eliminate cheating with these smart students. It reduces the risk of cheating, especially if you're shuffling the questions. This means that student A's number 1 would not be student B's number 1. Right? So they would receive a different order of questions, and every question on one page would be different for each student. Every question on each page, rather, would be different for each student. So I'm going to select every question on a new page. Now, navigation method. This refers to how students are able to take the quiz or to go through the quiz and advance from the different questions. So if the navigation method is free, this means that a student can take question 1, jump to question 3, go back to question 2. So the navigation method is not locked or sequential. They can take the quiz in whatever order they wish. If navigation method is sequential, this would mean that it is locked. They have to jump from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. They can't jump back to question 1. Or they can't jump all over and choose the questions they want to answer in whatever order they choose. It has to be in a sequential order. Okay, let's move down now to question behavior. And shuffle within questions, we're going to select yes for that. I had earlier mentioned when you shuffle within questions, the students receive a different order of questions. How questions behave. So by default, deferred, so you would see 1, 2, 3, 7 different options. I can't tell you what all the 7 options are. However, the default, which is a deferred feedback, this basically means that the student takes the quiz and their feedback is given after the quiz or later while the quiz is still closed. We have immediate feedback, which basically means that once the student takes the quiz, they're receiving immediate feedback as it relates to their results and grades. All right, so if I select deferred feedback and I click on review options, you would realize that during the attempt is completely grayed out because I want the feedback to be deferred, as the name suggests. I don't get it immediately, but I can get it after the attempt, when the quiz is closed, or later while the quiz is still open, but not during the attempt or immediately. Okay. All right, do we have any questions thus far? Is it clear to you so far? You can raise your hand or you can leave a message in the chat. Miss Balachandar, you can take the mic.
I was saying it is clear.
It is clear, okay. All right, thank you. Okay, all right, so I'll continue, good. Now, review options. These are enabled by default because of the question behavior we selected, but you can still disable if you need to. If you don't want students to be able to see their results immediately after the attempt, you can disable. And why would you want to disable this option? Simply because we have a date or period of 9th of March to 10th of March. You don't want students to be telling their other friends what the questions are that they should expect and what they had put for their answers, right? So what we normally recommend is that you give feedback to the students based on the nature of the quiz after the quiz activity is closed. That is what we recommend. All right, so I'm going to disable all of these, and even though you have after the quiz is closed is enabled, you can still select what you want to issue to the students. Do you want to show them whether their answer was correct? Do you want to show them what marks they got for the question? Do you want them to see specific and general feedback? Do you want them to see what the right answer is? So you still get to decide what result you want to show them or what feedback you want to give to them even after the quiz is closed. Okay. We're going to move down to appearance, but there's nothing that we normally recommend that lecturers change here. These are default options. We can let these stay as it's important to you. You can, tell the system that you want your students' image to be shown. That is, if their profile is configured to reflect their picture, or photograph of themselves. All right, we're not changing the decimal places, not changing the decimal places in the question grids. We're gonna move down to Safe Exam Browser. All right, so I'm not sure if we know about this, but the Safe Exam Browser, as far as I know, it's not currently being used because it's something that has to be configured, but I'll still explain what it is. The Safe Exam Browser is really a feature that helps to reduce the risk of cheating, wherein it locks students into their quiz page once they're taking the activity. This basically means that they can't navigate away from the quiz page. They can't use certain shortcut keys to bring up any other window or shortcut keys to perform any actions on the current page. The only actions they're able to perform are clicking the correct answers and actually clicking their responses to the quiz, right? Because the answers do have to be correct, and actually typing in their responses like the short answer or essay type questions, right? So it basically restricts the actions that they're able to undertake while doing the quiz. That is what it does. Okay, so this is something that has been used in the past. It's currently not configured. LTSU will be responsible for its configuration. I will test it to see if it is, because once we can see it, that means it's in the system, but it takes a process for configuration. But I'll test it to see if it's configured just yet. The last time I tested it, it was not configured at all. Okay, that's a good question, Dr. Williams. I will write again to LTSU because I've really been pushing this Safe Exam Browser thing because I find it to be very advantageous. But I'll write to LTSU again. I'll check it before first. The last time I checked, it was not configured, which was a couple of weeks ago. If it's not configured, I'll write to them again about that. All right, so I'll just make a note of it here. All right. Okay. All right, so let's move down to extra restrictions on attempts. And this is what Dr. Williams mentioned earlier regarding the password. Miss Balachandar, right, so we're putting no, because even though you're seeing an option here for configure manually, yes, this is something that you'd have to go in and configure, but this is done by the administrators of the site, which is not us at the Office of Distance Learning. It is actually done by the LTSU department. All right, so we're putting no for now. Now, with the extra restrictions on attempts, you can request that the students enter a password in order to gain access to the quiz. Okay, so if this is set up for a password, only students who have the password can access the quiz. And this might be an option that might be necessary for many reasons. Let's say you want to reissue a quiz, but you only want a certain number of students to take the quiz. You could give these students the password and they'd be able to access the quiz. So other students would be able to see the quiz, but they wouldn't be able to access it because they don't have the passphrase, the password for the quiz. All right. Now we have other settings here. Overall feedback basically allows you to enter feedback based on grades that students receive. So let's say, for example, a student has received 100%. You could give an overall feedback of excellent job, you have received full marks. Or if they have received, let's say, 50%, you could put something like, satisfactory. Or if they have failed the quiz, you could say, you have failed the quiz, try again later, or something of the sort. So this basically allows you to enter overall feedback based on grades received by students, and you can add those grades, and it also allows for you to add additional feedback fields if needs be. Okay, and then we have common module settings, restrict access, tags, competencies. These are not necessarily widely used. However, restrict access out of the four is probably the most commonly used, and it's really, as the name suggests, it allows you to restrict your students from gaining access. So if I click on add restriction, it will show me different ways in which I can create a restriction for this activity. And by the way, this is an option that is available for all activities and resources in UTech Online. So if I want to add restriction by date, I can do that, but that is already done up top. If I want to add restriction by grade, so I can require that the students achieve a specific grade in order to access this activity, I can do that. If I want to restrict students by group, let's say I only want group A to access this quiz, I can do that. All right, and there are other options for user profile based on whatever the fields that are in their profile, or by restriction set. So these are options for adding restrictions to the quiz. Okay, so let me see if I have any groups in this quiz, in this course rather. Okay, so I have a group called test group. So if I select that the students must match the following, it means that only students who are part of the test group can actually access this particular activity. All right, so this is how we restrict access by group. So I'm going to scroll down, click on save and return. All right, and this is what we just created. So this is empty, it's just a quiz shell, but it is step number 1. So it shows here the name of the quiz, it shows the opening and closing date and time, and it also shows that it's not available unless a student belongs to test group. All right, if I click on the quiz, it will show me that there are no questions. It says no questions have been added as yet, but it shows the instructions I had entered when I was configuring, shows attempts allowed, time limit, and what the grade to pass is. Okay, so here it says no questions have been added as yet. So if I need to add questions now, I have to click on the edit quiz button. So let's go ahead and do that. Do we have any questions? Yes, Mrs. McNamara, I agree with you. Yes, I'll be pushing it. Okay, all right. Do we have any additional questions or comments before we progress? No? Okay. All right, so this is our empty quiz. No questions are here, but you will see a very small button, it's the add button, and it allows us to add questions one by one, or from the quiz bank, or to add a random question. All right, so these are the 3 options here. So I can add a new question from the different question types, I can add a question from the question bank, or I can add a random question. So I'm going to be demonstrating all 3. If I click on add a new question, it will basically show me a little window with the different question types that Moodle allows for. Okay, and of course we have the multiple choice, true or false, matching, and the list goes on. So I'm going to demonstrate 3 of these questions. Let's look at multiple choice. 3 are the most popular: true or false and essay. All right, so I'm going to double click multiple choice, or I can click it once and click the add button. Okay, and I'm going to give my question a name. What I see many lecturers doing, which is okay, is to put the question name and the question text as same. So what I recommend is to number the questions. So I would call this question 1, okay, and then I would enter the question text here. So I'm going to put my question to be, how many parishes are there in Jamaica? Good. And remember, once more, your question does not have to be text only. You can incorporate video, you can incorporate audio, links, you can incorporate tables, you can incorporate the H5P interactive elements. And the next session that we'll have, we'll look at this, because I don't think a lot of persons know about H5P. So it's really an interactive set of elements that allows you to engage your students in a variety of ways. So it has games, it has engaged and interactive courseware, right? It has, so it's like about probably, I would say, 30 to 35 different interactive elements that you can incorporate into your course. All right, so we will look at that in another session, in the session to come, which will be next week, and that will be advertised in the broadcast. All right, so there are different things that you can, or different ways rather, that you can ask your students a question as opposed to just text. Okay, so in the chat, for question, you might indicate the topic for easy reference later. All right, so that could work as well, the topic. Mrs. Ware says she was introduced in a previous session but needed more time to familiarize with the feature. Okay, I'm assuming you're talking about the H5P, Mrs. Ware. Right, so we're going to be looking at that for our next session. Okay, all right, so I have my question here, and here is where I can enter the default mark, or the mark, sorry. So the default mark by Moodle is always going to be 1 regardless of the question type, but you have the option to change this. So if I want this question to be worth 2 marks, I can simply enter 2. All right, I can enter a general feedback here. All right, I can scroll down, select the type of answers in terms of, am I allowing for only 1 answer, or am I allowing for multiple answers? Because a multiple choice question can have multiple correct answers. Okay, but I'm going to select 1 answer only. The system is asking, how do I want to number the choices? And let me just zoom in as well, so you can see that it's asking if I want to shuffle the choices, because shuffling the choices and shuffling the questions are 2 different things. When you shuffle the questions, the students receive a different order of questions. When you shuffle the choices, these are the options for each question. All right, so that is a different option that Moodle allows for as well. By default, this is ticked, so we can let it stay as is. All right, how do you want to number the choices? Do you want it to be 1, 2, 3, or ABC, or do you want no numbering? You get to decide that. Okay.
Sorry, Miss Peck, could you repeat that? I got lost with the choice there. Please, could you go over that?
So this section, this is a section you're referring to?
I think it might be the shuffling the choices. What was the, I think it might be there.
Okay, right. So I was saying that by default, the system ticks the option that allows choices to be shuffled. I was just explaining the difference between shuffling questions and shuffling choices. When you shuffle questions, it means that the students receive a different order of questions. All right, and when you shuffle the choices, these are the options for the multiple choice questions. So a student's A might be another student's, D might be another student's C. So you can shuffle the choices as well as shuffle the questions. There are 2 different options. All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So choice 1, for choice 1, I'm going to enter 10. Good. And this is not the correct answer, so I will let the grade remain as none. Okay, we can have feedback as you have selected the incorrect response. That is if we want to give immediate feedback. That would be necessary for students, because they'll be able to immediately see that the answer is incorrect. Choice 2, we're going to put 12. That is not the correct answer either, so we're not changing the grade from none. Choice 4, or choice 3 rather, we're going to put 14. That is the correct answer, so we're going to change the grade to 100. And choice 4, 16, and we're going to let the grade stay at none. Now let's say we had 3 correct options. What we would have to do is to change the grade to 33.3 for all the 3 correct options, because it's out of 100, right? And 33.333 times 3 is 100. If there were 2 correct answers, we would have to give the two correct answers 50% so that it could add up to 100. But in our case, we're only giving one correct answer based on the nature of the question. So we have the grade at 100%. Okay, so we're going to scroll down. So those are the most important fields, I would say. There are, of course, other fields, as you can see, that you can explore in your own time, but these are the most important ones. We would scroll down, click on save, save changes, and the question would appear. So the question has been added to the quiz. This is not a question bank. This is just adding the question straight to the quiz. Okay. Now, let's add another question. But before we do that, how do we know that the question is fine? We don't want to preview it, right? So there's a little magnifying glass to the right of the question. If I click on it, it shows me how the question would appear to the student. Question is there, listing of the options are there, bulleted by A, B, C to D, and they can just tick the box to enter their response. If they want to tick something else, they have the option of doing so. And you would realize as well that the options are shuffled and not in the order I originally entered them. Okay. If I no longer want this question, I could simply delete it by clicking on the bin. What I like about Moodle is that when I click delete anything, it prompts me, are you sure you want to remove this? Yes or no? And I can click on no. Let's add another question. So let's add a true or false question. Okay, so I'm going to call this one question 2. Question text is, Jamaica is an island. This is a statement. Okay, and once more, default mark is 1. We're going to let that stay as is. If we scroll down, what the system is asking us to do here is simply to input the correct answer. So the correct answer is true. I will select true. I can enter feedback for the true response. I can enter feedback for the false response. I would then scroll down and click on Save Changes. Can you hide a question? Okay, so that is a good that's a good question. You cannot hide a question in the question. Okay, so if you have a quiz, you cannot hide the question within this space. You can, though, if you have a question bank, you can actually select which questions you want to pull from the question bank. But you can't hide a question from here, because any question you add here, it is going to go in the quiz, because that is what we're doing. We're actually putting them in the quiz. So it can be a case that it is here and the student won't see it. All right, but we'll be looking at the option shortly of you putting the questions in the question bank and selecting the ones that you want, or asking the system to randomly pull from the different question banks. Okay, let's add one more question. Add a new question, and we're going to let this one be an essay type question. Okay, so we're calling this question 3. Okay, and let's just, let me think about something quickly. All right, just think about something quickly. And when we scroll down, okay, so default mark for essay type questions is 5. But remember, you can always change this. Okay, gonna let that stay as is. And for the response format, you can select the type of box that you want your students to have. If you select HTML editor, they will get a box like this. So it's a box, that text editor that has several options. If you select HTML editor with file picker, it will give them a box like this, but it will also allow them a little icon to upload files. So this could be a PDF to support their response, or a Word document, so on and so forth. If you give them plain text, they would just get a box without these options. All right, we normally recommend HTML editor or with file picker if you want them to upload some supporting document. Now, require text. Do you want the students to enter text, or is text input optional? So clearly we want them to enter text because we want them to type their response in the box based on the question we have asked here. What do you want the input box size to be? So by default, it is 10 lines. So this basically speaks to the size of the box. And the lines refer to how many times they can enter, they can use rather the enter key on their keyboard to jump into a space that falls below the previous space. Okay, so I'm going to set it at 40. That's the biggest box size, just to be safe. If you really want to limit them, then you can play with the other options and preview to see what it looks like. Now, you can enter minimum and maximum word limit. You would see in the question text here where I said using 50 to 100 words, write about your experience living in Jamaica. So clearly, my minimum word limit is 50, but I can't enter it if I don't enable the box. So I click on enable, put 50 here, click on enable again, put 100 here. What would happen is that the student will not be able to submit their response if it is less than 50, and they won't be able to submit their response if it is more than 100. And additionally, while they're typing, it has a feature that shows them how many words they have typed already, right? And of course, that would indicate to them the amount of words they have left to type. All right, so those are the most important features and the fields that we want to fill out. As said, there are others that you can explore in your own time. We're going to scroll down, click on Save Changes, and we can preview the question. All right, and you see how that box is very big because I selected 40 lines. So they'll be able to type their response in this box. They can click on the arrow for additional options, and once they have entered their response, they can submit. And of course, it shows them to the left here how much a question is marked out of. So it says out of 5. Okay, so we are through now with adding questions one by one. Do we have any questions before we start to do the bulk upload? If the word limit is left blank, what will happen? So nothing will happen. The student will be able to type unlimited text. So they won't be restricted at all. Okay. All right. Are there any additional questions or statements you want to make before we continue? Okay, so silence I normally interpret as everything is good. So let's continue. Okay, so what I want to demonstrate to us now is how we can use different quiz formats to do a bulk importation of questions to UTech Online. Now, what we would use for this is Notepad. So I'm going to start another Notepad document. Notepad comes by default on all Windows operating systems. If it is that you have a Macintosh device, you can always download Notepad++. It's free and available for download from the App Store. So it is something that you can download if you don't have Notepad and you are running a Macintosh system. Can we do multiple formats in Moodle? Yes, you can if you're referring to multiple question types, which is what I just demonstrated. Mrs. Brown Mackenzie, you want to take the mic to better clarify your question?
Repeat.
Right, I'm asking for clarity.
Oh, I noted where you include multiple choice and the essay type questions. I was asking if it is that for one exam sitting, if it is that you could have a section where you have essay and multiple choice. If
Yes.
you can do that input for Moodle. at the same
Yes,
time?
yes, you can. Yes,
Okay. All right. Thank you.
right.
Mhm.
Yes,
Okay. All right. Thank you.
right.
Mhm.
You're welcome. So as we're demonstrating here, you can incorporate, yes, multiple question types in one quiz or one exam. So you're not limited. You can pick from the list that is there based on the type of question you're trying to create. Okay, so we have our notepad document open, and the first quiz format that we want to look at is Aiken. That's AIKEN, the Aiken, the Aiken quiz format. Now, with the Aiken quiz format, I find it to be a very simple way to create multiple choice questions. It only allows for multiple choice question creation, by the way. So the short answer, the true or false, these cannot be created using the Aiken format. All right, so that's the first thing I want to put out there. We have another format which is called the gift format, which allows for greater variety because you can create multiple question types, allows for short answer, matching, essay type, true or false, multiple choice, and probably other question types as well. But I demonstrate both because I know a lot of lecturers tend to have multiple choice questions. So as I said before, Aiken format is very simple. Very easy to create a question using the Aiken format. If it is though that you have your questions already done in Word, you can copy and paste them to Notepad. All right. So the question I'm going to type now, all right, let me just type a random question. But this is me demonstrating multiple choice using the Aiken format. So what is the correct answer for this question? That is my question. So I put the question and I put the punctuation mark at the end of the question. This is very important because we want the system to know that the question ends here and options start with A. Okay, so I'm gonna put this option, B would be maybe this option, C would be possibly this option, and D would be this. Okay, and then close bracket and B and a full stop. Consistency has to be maintained. So if it's A dot, it has to be B dot, C dot, D dot going down. All right.
We lost you for a while there, Michaela. You can repeat that.
Could you repeat that for me, Mrs. Ware?
We weren't hearing you for a while ago. You
Oh
got
no.
lost. You got so when
Okay,
you're
sorry about
listing A, B, C,
okay. All right, not hearing you as I'm not hearing you well, to Mrs. Ware, but I think I get what you're saying. So let me repeat. So I was saying that when you are listing the options, you have to capitalize A to D. All right. So the bullets for each have to be capitalized. However, I was saying that it doesn't have to be that you have A dot. It could be A with a close bracket, B with a close bracket going down. All right. But you can't have a close bracket and full stop occurring in the same question. It has to be where consistency is maintained. All right, so if all of these are A dot, then the system will accept. If all of them are A, close bracket going down to D, the system will accept. But you can't have a mixture with the different symbols. Sorry about that. Okay, Once we're through listing the options, you would see that I entered answer, colon, space, and the letter that represents the correct answer. Okay. Let's now move down to the second question. All right, sorry about that. My throat is a little bit itchy. Okay, so I had mentioned that the Aiken format only allows for multiple choice questions. So if it is that I'm entering another question, it would be a multiple choice question. All right, so I won't bother to do that. What I'm going to do now, let's say we had multiple choice questions. Let's say we had 5 of them here. How would we get them into the system? We would have to save this notepad document as a TXT file. TXT stands for text in short, right? So I would click on File, Save, or Save As, and then I would give this a name. So I'm gonna call this Moodle Demo Quiz. Ensure that the Save As type is TXT, or else Moodle will not accept it. All right, click on Save, and that is saved. Now, how do we import this question into Moodle? We're going to look at that. But before we do that, let us look at another question type, or another question, another quiz format rather, that Moodle accepts. So we're going to close this. We already created it. We're going to close it. We're going to open a new notepad document, and we're going to be looking at the gift format. Yes, Mrs. Ware.
Nata, when you're doing the A full stop or A close bracket, there must be a space between that and the question and the
That's correct.
answer.
Yes. That's correct, Mrs. Ware. All right. Okay. Now, with the gift format, as said before, it's more flexible in that it allows for the creation of multiple question types, but persons find it to be technical because there are symbols that you have to use to indicate what is correct, what is incorrect, what marks the start or end of a new question. So let us enter a question here. So if you realize for both questions, I did not put 1 and then I started entering my question. That is not necessary because the system will number the questions for you. Okay, so let me type a question here. What is Moodle? I'm gonna put my punctuation. I'm going to enter in a new line and put an open curly bracket. So this means that I've entered my question and I want to start listing the possible options. All right. So my first incorrect option is, and you realize, I think this is referred to as a tilde. I don't think I've ever gotten the correct symbol name for this one here. Yeah, let's call it a tilde for now. If anybody knows what it is, what the real name of the symbol is, you can tell. But let's call it a tilde for now. It is found under your escape key on your keyboard. All right. So we're gonna use that symbol, and we are
It's
going to put
actually a tilde.
Oh, I'm correct.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So the tildes represent all the incorrect responses. All right. So I'm going to put that Moodle is just a website. All right. Let's put another incorrect response. Moodle is used only for forum discussions. Let's put another incorrect response. Moodle is only used to facilitate video conferencing. And now let's put our correct response, which is preceded by an equal sign. Moodle is a learning management system. Right? And then to close the question, I have to use a close curly bracket. So let's run through that. We have our question. At the end of the question, we have a punctuation mark. Okay. For listing our questions, we simply have to put a symbol that tells the system which answers are incorrect and which ones are correct. So the ones that are incorrect are preceded by the tilde, and the correct response preceded by the equal sign. Once you have entered the question and the options, you use a curly bracket to close that question, and then you enter twice, because we're going to start typing another question, but there has to be space between each question so that the system is able to break up the questions during the importation process. Okay. Let us now type an essay type. Let's set an essay type question. Okay. Can call this one in your own words, explain what an LMS is. Okay. Once we have the question, we put the punctuation mark at the end, create a space, and then we're gonna put the curly bracket open and close with no space in between. All right, do we have a question? Okay. And no hand is raised? No. Okay. All right. So this is how you do the essay type question. Very simple. You enter the question, ensure you have your punctuation mark at the end, you create a space, and then you have the open and close curly bracket. There's no space in here. All right. It's just an open and close curly bracket. There's always been arguments surrounding if there has to be a space between the punctuation mark and the open and curly bracket. I think there has to be a space. I mean, I could test it one day to see if I don't put the space, if it would still upload, but I've just always done it with the space and it works. So I've never tried it any other way. All right. But if there's an error in any question you are uploading, the system will tell you which question has the error, and then you'd have to seek to find what the error is. All right, so I'm just doing the popular question types. Let's now do the true and false. Okay, so I have my question. I'm going to put my punctuation mark, space, and in curly bracket, I'm going to use the letter that represents if this question is true or false. So I put F because Moodle is not just a website. All right, and you'd realize I use capital F for false. Okay, so I have 3 questions. Take note that there's a space that divides each question, and that space, of course, was achieved by clicking the enter key on my keyboard. And also remember, you don't need to number questions. If you number them, you're going to have a double number because Moodle is going to number the questions for you. Okay, and just as with the Akin format, we're going to be saving this gift format by clicking on Save, File, Save. I'm going to give this a name, so let's call this Moodle Demo Quiz 1. Ensure Save as type is text, and we click on Save. Okay, so I'm going to close the Notepad document, and we're going to now look at how we can import these questions to this quiz. All right, if you are doing your questions, you don't need to be using multiple formats, multiple quiz formats. I'm just demonstrating to you what the options are, and you can use the one that you see fit for you, the one that you prefer. That's easier to work with for you. But just remember that the Akin only accepts multiple choice questions. All right, so I'm not going to close this screen at all. I'm going to open a new window. So I'm going to right click on the course code to take me back to the main course page. Click on open link in new tab. All right, and then we are going to create a category. That's our next step. We're going to be creating categories so that we can upload the quiz questions we just created in their respective categories. Oh, it's gift, G-I-F-T, gift format. Okay, so to get to the question bank, top right of our screen where we have the actions menu, we click on that, select more at the bottom. Under the course administration option, we're going to scroll all the way to the bottom and we see question bank options. We have questions, categories, import, export. Remember, the first thing that we want to do is to create the categories before we just import them anywhere in the quiz.
Just a second, Michaela, could you go back to the starting point to how we get here again, please? I think I somehow missed that.
Okay. All right. So what we did from the course page, this is the main course page. What I did though, I just right clicked on the course code to open it in a new tab as opposed to navigating from this page because we want to get back here. All right, so I opened the course code in a new tab which displayed the main course page, and then using the actions menu top right of the course, we click on more. So we're under the course administration menu option. We're going to scroll down to question bank. And under question bank, we have 4 options. So remember that we could just go ahead and import. But in order to categorize the quiz questions that we just created, we want to actually create the folders for them. All right, so we're going to click on categories. Scroll down to create the category. And the parent category, I would recommend that you select the top. So it says top for the name of your course. This is the highest category based on hierarchical structure. Based on how you can see, it's the highest category. I recommend that you select this for your parent category. Okay, so what we're seeing here, we're seeing other categories that were created. All right, even categories that are not a part of this course. So to keep it in the course, you select top for the name of the course that you are in. For me, it's top for Moodle demonstration course. All right, and then now you're going to give the category a name. So I'm going to call this Moodle demo quiz. And category info is not important. Category ID number is not important. We just want to have a name for easy identification of the category.
Okay, one question here. If you're only doing the multiple choice, then you wouldn't need to create the category, or you'd still need to do so?
Yes, you want to create the category because you want at any point in time for future that you're going, you can easily identify and locate your questions.
Okay, thanks.
All right, no problem. Okay, so we have a quiz name, we have a category name, and we're just going to scroll down and click on add category. Let's create one more category. We're creating another category because we created 2 separate quizzes. All right, so just for demonstration purposes, once you have category selected, you scroll down, select top 4, the name of the course that you are in. Give the category a name. So let's call this one Moodle Demo Quiz 1. Scroll down, add category. All right, so we can see the categories here. And it in brackets, this is 0. That's simply because there are no questions added to the categories just yet. All right, we're seeing 7942 for the others because this is a count of the amount of questions in the other categories that exist. Okay. All right, how do we import now? The option is there. Click on import. And this part is very important because if we don't select the file format that we created the quiz in, then Moodle is not so intelligent to be able to interpret which format is being used. So we have to make that selection. Okay, so the first quiz that we had created, it was done in Akin format. So we're going to select Akin, scroll down to general. We have to select the import category. We just created it. If you create it and you don't select it, it makes no sense. Okay, so from the drop down, we're looking for Moodle demo quiz. We just created that category. It's here. Okay, and this is very important as well. Do you want to stop on error? Yes or no? So this basically means that during the importation process, if there are errors, do you want the quiz to, do you want other questions to be taken over into Moodle, or do you want the importation to come to a complete halt if an error is identified? I recommend yes, because it's a lot of confusion when you import the questions. Some have errors, some are fine. All right, so yes. And then you can drag and drop the notepad document here, or you can click on choose a file, upload a file, and then locate the file on your computer. All right, so the name, I think I gave it the name Moodle demo quiz. All right, so here they are. So I'm going to double click on it, upload this file, and click on import. Okay, so what I normally tell lecturers is once you see green, everything is good. If you see red, there's an error. All right, so it says importing one question from the file because yes, you only had one multiple choice question in the Akin file format for the notepad document. So we're going to click on continue. Good. And it is showing me that the question was successfully imported in the Moodle demo quiz category. And I can click to preview my question. So edit, preview. All right, this is what the question looks like. Question 1, marked out of 1. You can't set the marks while you're setting up the question in Notepad. You'd have to modify it once it is imported. So to do that, you click on the edit option, and you click on edit question. Or you could just click on the question from here. Or that doesn't work anymore. No, that doesn't work. So you click on edit question, scroll down. Let's say you wanted to change something about the question. You might want to add an image because you can't add the image beforehand. You can do all of that once the questions are imported. If you wanted to change your mark to 2 instead, you can do that. All right, so you see you have all the options here that you can modify if needs be. Scroll down, you click on save changes. Okay, all right, now let's look at importing the gift format questions now. So we already created a category for it. Let's click on import. By the way, remember, these questions are not added to the quiz as yet. We have simply just brought them over to Moodle. These are the only questions in the quiz. We added them one by one. All right, so let's go back here. We're going to be selecting the gift format now from this list. Scroll down. Remember, under general, we have to select the correct category. So this one is Moodle demo quiz 1. Stop on error, yes. And then choose a file. All right, let's take that question, Ms. McNamara.
What I'm wondering if the category is to categorize the questions or just to name the file I'm importing.
No, not just to name the file. It's for categorization and for your easy identification of the questions. Because remember that if you upload them without selecting a category, you won't know where to find them. You'll have to be searching your system to find them. But once you have created a category, given the category a name, and added the question to that category, it's easier for you to be able to find it.
So suppose I have different categories. Can I take some questions from the various categories?
Yes, you can. So we're going to be demonstrating that shortly. Yes.
All right. Thank you.
All right, no problem. Okay. All right, so we have, did we select? Okay, so we're here, we're going to import, we're going to find the file. So choose a file, upload. This is the second file that we created, or text file. So I'm going to double click on it and upload this file. All right, so I'm going to click on import. So gift format was selected. I'm going to click on import. And all 3 questions were successfully brought over. All right, so I'm going to click on continue. And I can see the 3 questions listed in the Moodle Demo Quiz 1 category. Okay, now how do we add the categories now? How do we add the questions from the category to the quiz? Let me just refresh the screen and close this one. Okay, so we looked at the option to add a new question, but there are 2 other options. You can add from the question bank, or you can add a random question. Let's look at adding from the question bank. Okay, now if I click on the drop down to select a category, I'm going to see a lot of categories. But I know my categories because I created the categories and I placed the questions in these categories. Good. So we're looking for the category that says Moodle Demo Quiz and Moodle Demo Quiz 1. We created these 2. So if I wanted to pull the questions, let's say I had many questions in this one here, I would just click on it, select the question I want to bring over, and then click on add selected question to the quiz. All right, so that is brought over from one category. If I wanted to add questions from the other categories, the same process, add from question bank. You get to select your category. So we're going to select from Moodle Demo Quiz 1. Right. If I wanted all the questions, I would tick the select all option here. If not, I could just select the ones that I want by clicking on them and by selecting the option to add selected questions to the quiz. So Mrs. McNamara, that is how you would select questions from multiple categories. Now, if there is a case where you want the system to pull random questions from many categories, that is an option as well that you have. Or if you just want the system to pull random questions from one category, that's possible. Let's say, which we don't have, but let's create a scenario. Let's say we had a question bank of 100 questions or more, but we want the system to pull 20 random questions for each student. We don't get to control. We just tell the system to pull 20 random questions. So this basically means that each of my students would receive 20 random questions from the pool of 100 questions. How do we do that? Click on add. That's our third option. Add a random question. Okay. We can select the question bank. So I'm going to use the Moodle test quiz question bank. Okay, and I get to enter how many questions I want. Number of random questions, I'm going to select 3. All right, so I don't get to select them because the system will do that selection for me for my students. So once I enter the amount I want, I would scroll down, click on add random question, and they'll appear here. So these are 3 random questions. We won't get to know what that particular question will be. If I click on see questions here, it will show all the questions in the question bank, but not the specific random question that my students will receive. That's impossible. All right. If I wanted to do the same thing from another question bank, it's the same procedure. Add a random question, select the question bank I want to add from or pull from. All right. When I see the questions, I can determine the number of random questions I want pulled from it. So if I want 2 random questions pulled from this bank of 4, I enter that here, scroll down, and add random question. All right, so we have 11 questions in our question bank. Do we have any questions before we proceed? Is it clear to everyone? Any comments, any questions? Okay, all right, happy to hear that, Mrs. McNamara. Any questions from anybody? Everyone is following with me thus far? Okay, all right, so let's continue. Now, you would realize that we have 11 questions. You would also realize that there is an option on this screen to change the marks. So I do have to be clicking in each of the individual questions to change the marks. If I want the marks, the total of marks to be increased or decreased, I could modify from this page. So if I want total marks to be 20, currently you can see total marks is 70. So let's say I wanted it to be 20. Let's put another mark for this question 6. Try to bring it up a bit. All right, let's add another mark for this one. We're going to let this one be 4 instead. So we just click on the pencil, enter the number, and hit the enter key on our keyboard. All right, so total marks is now 20 and maximum grade is 10. And you can change this as well if it's important to you. All right, we want to shuffle the questions, so we want to tick this to shuffle here. So kindly note, remember that when we were setting up the quiz, when we're doing the quiz configuration for the shell, there was an option that we ticked to shuffle the questions. If this one is not ticked, the questions will not be shuffled. Both have to be ticked. Both have to be enabled for the questions to shuffle. All right, that's very important. Okay. So as usual, if you want to edit the question, or here you actually click on the question if you want to edit it, right? So you have to click on the settings option here, right? Okay, and then if you want to preview, you click on the magnifying glass. If you want to delete, you click on the bin here. Okay, and you can see that each question has its own page because it tells you page 1 has this question, page 2 has this question, and so on and so forth. If you were given this quiz,
sorry,
go ahead, Mrs.
The shuffle buttons are 1, the shuffle options in the question, and the other shuffle button is the shuffle questions. Just checking.
Right, so
you have to shuffle buttons.
You're breaking up, Mrs. Ware.
You said you have to shuffle 2, you had to tick 2 shuffle buttons. I'm just confirming. One is a shuffle button for shuffling questions, and one is a shuffle button for shuffling answers.
Okay, yes. So it's actually 3 shuffling options. Two of them have to be ticked for the questions to be shuffled. The first one was when we were doing the quiz configuration, and then the second one is here. The third one was when we were actually setting up the multiple choice question. So let me just show you quickly. The third one has to do with something separate, which is shuffling the choices. See, it's right here, shuffle the choices. This is for the MCQs. But the other 2 that we clicked on are for the questions to be shuffled. And I was saying that both of them have to be ticked, because if both are not ticked, then the questions will not be shuffled. All right, so let me just quickly show you that option that I'm referring to. All right, let's go back to edit settings. I think it's here. Hold on. Okay, Shuffle within questions, yes. So it says, if enabled, the parts making up each question will be randomly shuffled each time a student attempts the quiz, provided that the option is also enabled in the question settings, which is right here. So if this is not enabled, then it will not happen. All right, so it has to be ticked at both sections. All right, hope that's clear. All right, as a beginner, it's a lot to take in. I fully agree with you, Mrs. Mrs. Brown Mackenzie. I fully agree with you. I also have manuals on this. So if that would help as well, then I'm willing to send that. Can you import questions from a Word document? All right, good question, Mrs. Balachandar. So I'm going to be very honest with you. I'm not going to tell you no, simply because I only know about 3 of the probably 9 question formats that are listed. Possibly for the other question formats, you can use a Word document, but not for Akin and not for Gift. All right, but that is something that you can explore in your own free time. But Akin and Gift, which are the most popularly used, do not accept Word documents.
Excuse me, Miss Peck.
Sure.
Okay, with respect to, you mentioned something about notepad. So I can copy and paste from my questions from the Word document and paste them to Notepad.
Yes, that's
And then
correct.
I can do that.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes, that's correct.
Right.
What we
Whether
normally
or not I'm using Akin or
Gift.
or Gift.
Right.
But it's just that if I copy and paste, then I have to ensure that the numbering, that they're not to have any numbering.
Right. Numbering is not
Right.
necessary. That's correct.
Not necessary. All right. Okay. What if? Okay, go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
I'll ask that question another time.
You're
Okay.
sure?
I was thinking that when you're doing sometimes your multiple choice questions, you do have, like, you would list several options, and then A would probably be 1, 2, 3. B would probably be 1 and 2. C
Yeah.
would be 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe D would be 1 and 4 or 2 and 4. Using that same, so if I am to put that, a question like that in Notepad, I just copy and paste and put it there like that, and then when I'm exporting, it will be so aligned in the document or whatever in the test
Yeah, man.
that I'm
Everything.
creating.
Yes, everything would be
Everything
fine
will.
as long as you are using the correct format, and if you're using Gift, you're using the correct symbols to represent what is correct and what is incorrect. Yes, everything should be fine.
Okay. And yeah, you did say that you do have manual on this and that you're going to send them out, yes?
Yes. So what I
Yes,
will
I'd
do
love.
for everyone, I will just send the manual with the recording. Once you have left your email address, I will just send
Yes.
both of them together. Yeah.
Okay, my email address is in the chat. I left my email address in the chat. So I
Okay, no
think I'll have
problem.
to leave now as well. I have a class. But I thank you so
Okay.
very much.
You are welcome. Thanks for
All right.
attending.
Yeah, ma'am. Okay,
All
then
right.
bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Mrs. Brown Mackenzie, yes, it's soft copy, so I'll include the recording, Mrs. Ware, but we need to adjust as required in Notepad. Yes, so if you're copy and pasting, the adjustments have to be made to reflect the format that you want to use. Yes. Okay, all right, no problem. So persons are leaving, and that is fine because we have basically come to the end of the session. What I wanted to say to you is that once you have the questions here, then you are finished because the questions are added to the quiz. So let's look at that now. So I'm going to go back to the main course page, scroll down to access the quiz. And now it is saying preview quiz now. Initially it was saying edit questions, right? So preview quiz now, and it tells the students they have a time limit of 1 hour. When you start, the timer will begin to count down. It cannot be paused. You must finish your attempt before it expires. Are you sure you wish to start now? Start attempt. So the timer is here. The question number is to the left, and the marks for the question is also there. So I'm seeing options for edit question because I'm in as a teacher, but this is the view broadly that the student would get. All right, so they would click on the correct response, next page, and remember that this is not a sequential navigation, so they could click to go to question 9, right, come back to question 10, and then back to question 2, so they can click all over the place because the navigation method is not locked. All right, so that is what the questions look like because we placed each question on one page. Okay, so what we want to do, so for next week, I think I might have 2 sessions because we have to look at troubleshooting for the quiz because so many things can go wrong with quiz creation. As you can see, many processes are involved. We want to look at how to troubleshoot if you have different issues setting up a quiz. That is one. Or if your students have issues accessing the quiz, different troubleshooting measures that can be taken. All right, very, very important. And then in next week as well, we want to look at the interactive H5P elements because I think that will help to augment and just enhance your overall online course delivery. There are many, many beautiful interactive features that I want to introduce you to that I think would be helpful towards your online course presentation. All right, good question. That's Morrison. How do you grade SS in Moodle? That's going to be a part of the troubleshooting session as well. Grading, manually grading. That's going to be a part of the troubleshooting session. So as usual, these will be advertised in the broadcaster as it relates to the day and time for next week. All right. So do we have any additional questions before we go? Are there any additional questions? Okay, no problem, Mrs. Ware.
Miss Peck,
Yes, Mrs.
Binal here. Right. I had all of these quiz and course content uploaded in the previous format. How do we retrieve them into the new changed format on Moodle?
You say you had them what? You had them where?
On Moodle.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, and since the change, I can't find what I have had in the on the system anymore.
So you're saying that you lost courses? That's what you're saying?
Yes, yes. All of them. None of that can be retrieved. I can't find any at all.
What is? Did you write to us about that?
No, but I just realized because I wasn't teaching that course this term.
Oh, you're just realizing that. All right. Could you just give me one of the course codes for any of the modules you're not seeing?
Yes, NUR 4001.
All right, just give me a second. All right, in the meantime, do we have any additional questions while I search for that course?
Miss Peck, this is Kerry Weatherly. I think they're in the archives because I had a similar situation and I was able to find mine from the previous time the module was offered. So they're in the archives. It's just for to be located.
Right, so that's where I am now. I'm in the archive. Miss Balachandra, could you repeat the course code MUR 4001?
4001.
Mm-hmm. All right, let me just put a space here. All right, what's the name of that course?
I think it's
Indian family.
NUR. NUR.
Oh,
It's
N as
NUR.
in
Oh,
nerd.
oh, it is
Oh,
NUR.
thank you, Mr. All right, so I'm seeing it here, beginning family, and you are there as a lecturer as well. So the courses are there. What you need to do, Miss Balachandar, just write to us. Just send us an email, and what I will do, I will send you the link to gain access, and you just use your regular UTech login to get into the platform to access your courses. All right.
Thank you
If it
so
is a
much.
case where you need them in the live environment, whatever your request is, just write an email to me.
All right, will do.
I'm leaving my email address now, and you just write to me and let me know what you want. All right. Thank you, Miss McNamara and Miss Dr. Akin. Thank you, Miss Becker. I have to leave now, but okay, no problem, no problem, no problem. All right. Okay. So you are welcome, everybody. You're welcome, Mrs. Sparks. So if we have no additional questions, then it is safe to say goodbye. Thank you so much for attending. Thanks for making the session interactive by stating your comments and concerns and by asking questions. So we will reconvene hopefully next week for additional sessions, as mentioned earlier, troubleshooting session and the interactive H5P session. Today's session was recorded. So once you have left your email address, the recording will be sent to you along with a copy, a soft copy of the manual guiding today's session. All right, so take care, everyone, and goodbye.